Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show, the show that celebrates every single day the amazing people who make this place, Mississippi, such a great place to live, work, and play. It is Fridays on this show. This is the opportunity we had to check in with Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. And so that's where we're going immediately so we can take advantage of the couple of segments we had with Jeff this morning. So without any further ado, good morning, Jeff. How you doing, my friend?
Ricky, you're doing great. Good to be on with you, buddy.
Hey, listen, I thought you guys, really, there's a lot of cussing and discussing that's happening currently as it relates to the Saints season. A lot of discussion about culture. We've got the Los Angeles Chargers that are interested in Jeff Ireland. We'll remind people of what that means. It's not good for the Saints if we can't somehow find a way to keep him. You dropped an important column this morning that, as you pointed out, it's got a lot of goodies in it. So there's a lot to talk about. And also the Pels. They absolutely annihilated. Help me with
the
Warriors, of course, because Seth is what came to mind, and I forgot the team name there temporarily. But what a game that was! Good Lord, we'll come back to that here in just a second. But why don't we start, Jeff, with you dropped a column this morning that I want to encourage people to go read at NOLA.com. You can also sign up for the newsletter while you're there because it's the best newsletter going right now as it relates to the Saints and the professional sports framework of New Orleans in this region. What's the column that you dropped this morning?
It's just basically explaining the cultural issues that the organization's trying to deal with. Dennis Allen, I thought, in his season-ending press conference Monday, was very good. I thought he addressed a lot of the issues that he feels like have held the team back. And I thought he was accountable and, culpable for some of the things that have gone awry. I think he had just the right tone of being optimistic that they can get this thing on track, but also recognizing they fell short. But one of the things he mentioned was, they've got to get the right mindset back, the winning mindset, the workplace culture. And what he means by that, and these are big words, right? Commitment. Doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, the discipline it takes at the NFL level to win. And I think just by human nature over time and the fact that this organization has been successful for a long time, I think those standards, and I've talked about it on your show before, the standards have just been lowered a little bit over time. And it wasn't something that happened overnight. James Hurst talked about this. He said, I think it's more of something that's gone adrift rather than took a quick right turn or an intentional turn. It's just they kind of lost their way, and they've got to have a course correction now inside the building. And it's not just the players. It's not just the coaches. It's everybody. Everybody has to kind of take a step back and recommit to the work ethic that it takes to win at the NFL level, because it only takes just a little bit of a slide in that level with the competitiveness of the NFL to end up missing the playoffs like they have. They've been here before, Ricky. This happened in 2014, 15, and 16 when Sean Payton was the coach. Attention to detail waned. Meetings were starting late. It's all these little things. And in each one of them on their own doesn't seem like a lot. But when you add them all up, it's like the broken windows theory. You break a window and you leave it unrepaired, it says something to people about the neighborhood, and then disorder steps in, and then you end up with crime. It's a well-known sociological theory. That's what I think has happened with the Saints. And I've talked to you about this before. Everyone wants to go, it's Pete Carmichael's fault. It's the play calling. It's Derek Carr. They want to make it simple and have a scapegoat, and it's way more complicated than that.
It happens in companies all the time. And what happens is when there's not good leadership from the top, what happens is that processes get tweaked and changed, and over time, it kind of snowballs. You think about all the little things that can snowball. And then, a year or two down the road, you look at it, and the organization that you're observing looks nothing like the organization that it was 2 years ago. It's just a series of things. And you know what? With Saban's retirement, there's going to be a lot of focus on Saban. But, I thought someone wrote this morning that Saban breathed his own air, meaning that he stood so alone. But what we're going to all get is a case study in what that monomaniac looks like and how you have to have that kind of focus in order to be successful. We'll see the same thing about Belichick during his great years. I mean, there's no denying what that looked like. Even Sean Payton that you wrote about during his best years, there was a monomaniac mission there. And you can't leave anything to chance. Every detail has to be thought about. And so what you're saying is we've lost that edge, and we've got to get it back.
Yes. Sean Payton used to say that coaching is like gardening, right? You have to tend to it every day. And if you don't tend to it every day, it'll get out of hand, right? And that's exactly what I think's happened here. It was just a little neglect over time, but the standards get lowered, and then you end up with where we're at now. I wrote about this in the story this morning. I mean, it's a small thing, but it's something, right? The players would all of a sudden the last year or two, Ricky, they'd start parking in the front parking lot in front of the Saints training facility. There's about 35, 40 spots there, but it's where the general public's supposed to park. The players have a gated lot on the side, much bigger. It's probably 5 times bigger. It's where the staff and the players are supposed to park. Well, all of a sudden, 7, 8, and then sometimes 15 players are taking up these front spots where the public, fans are supposed to park, media, contractors, and it became parking issues out there. I mean, people were having to park in handicapped spots. That stuff can't happen. It sounds like a small thing, but in my opinion, it symbolizes something much bigger. A lack of institutional control, and they've got to get that right. And they know that. I mean, that's what I would say. Dennis Allen, Mickey Loomis, they understand that. Now, can they get it fixed? I mean, it happened before. They righted the ship and went 17, 18, 19, 20, had double-digit win seasons. Can they do that now with Dennis Allen and Derek Carr? They did it with Peyton and Breeze. That's what we're going to find out.
Well, listen. There's no doubting this reality that the Saints, as the season wore on, certainly in the last quarter of the season, they looked like they were an entirely different team than at the beginning of the season. And this lack of detail might be the kind of things that contribute to, for example, waiting too long to deal with the Trevor Penning disaster. Waiting too long to deal with certain things. At the end of the day, though, the team was a different team at the end of the season. They were beginning to figure some stuff out, and you got a chance to see when our quarterback is not under pressure. Derek Carr makes some really good throws, and I mean that was good to see, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for optimism, you saw it in that last stretch. And I've pointed this out a bunch of times. I've covered a lot of teams, Ricky, in my years. I'm getting up there. So, I've seen it go south. I've seen it. I covered a Jim Haslett team that lost their last 4 games of the season to last place teams in divisions and got beat 35-0 by the 49ers at home. I've seen a team tank. That's not what happened here. So, there's a lot of speculation out there, especially by people that aren't in the building, that aren't out there every day the way we are, that are saying Dennis Allen's lost the team. And there's all this, speculation. That's just not the case. I mean, if he'd have lost the team, they wouldn't have gone 4-1 at the end of the year. They would not have played their best football at the end of the year. So I do not believe that for an instance. I do think there's some issues they have to deal with. I think they've got to make some changes to the coaching staff. I think they've got to make changes to the way they do things. And I think they know this, and now they've got to pull it off, and they've got to get buy-in. Players got to be a part of it, coaches, staff, everybody. This is not a us or them. It's not divisive. It's kind of an all-inclusive buy-in that they got. And the players I talked to on Monday seem to welcome that. They understand that it's going to take everyone rowing in the same direction.
They do understand that. Listen, Jeff, for the listeners of this show, they should appreciate the fact that we have this opportunity to visit with you. There's no mystery behind why you wrote a series of books about the Saints, why you wrote the definitive book on Drew Brees and Sean Payton, why you just completed the book with Steve Gleason, why you're on the Hall of Fame selection committee. why you're so awarded as a journalist. I watched you, in fact, during the moment. I was there with you while there was this tug of war in the family around ownership of the Saints, and watch how you broke that story and how you played that story and how important your sources were to you. And I mean, you owned it. So again, I'm not surprised when I see you break the story on John Gruden. I mean, you got all these powerful journalists all over the nation, and here you are breaking the story on John Gruden. And by the way, I hate the way people steal your breaking story by writing exactly what you wrote and somewhere in the story just giving you a little bit of credit to it. But they're trying to own the story themselves. I hate that's what's happened to journalism in the internet age. Hey, when we come back on the other side, we're going to dive in a little bit to this John Gruden angle, because it could be very important to us if we were to go down that route. We'll see you as we continue our conversation with Jeff Duncan. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. We're so lucky to have access to award-winning journalist Jeff Duncan, journalist and columnist from NOLA.com of the Times-Picayune. Thrilled to have him part of this conversation because it's always relevant, man. He's tuned in, man. He's plugged into all the important topics and sources about what the latest is, and it's going to be another dynamic off season. Can't wait to cover it and discuss it with you, Jeff, as it sort of unfolds. But you broke the story on John Gruden. You expertly sort of found that story when you were in Tampa, and you know, again, journalists all over America stole it from you by only giving you credit and writing essentially the same story that you wrote. I hate that part of the digital media realm. But great story. What's your take on it, my friend?
Well, look, you know, I think the way we characterized it, Ricky, is, you know, they're considering hiring John Gruden. I think that's important to note. Like, I don't think it's a done deal by any means. I think it's part of the process that Mickey Loomis, the Brain Trust, and Dennis Allen this week, they're all meeting, evaluating the staff, evaluating the roster. Next week, the coaches all come back. I expect we'll hear some coaching changes next week, but not going to happen this week. Coaches are off, you know, not even in the building. So, except Dennis Allen. So I think part of that evaluation will be looking at the offensive staff. What do we need to do? And I don't think it's by, you know, coincidence or happenstance that John Gruden met with the team. He was in the team meeting down in Tampa. He went to dinner with the staff. He's been here a couple of times already, you know, for observing and consultation on the offense. I think there's a football side that makes a lot of sense there. If you know John Gruden, first of all, the biggest thing I think that came out of Monday, in my opinion, was Dennis Allen saying that he thinks the offense, the way they run their offense, the Sean Payton offense, is fine. They don't need to overhaul their offense, is what he said. Now, that could change this week when he talks to Mickey Loomis. They may decide to go in another direction. But what I took from that is they're going to keep running the same offensive system. That's what Derek Carr feels comfortable in. They've got this quarterback. They're invested in him. Overhauling it to a 49ers-style offense doesn't make a lot of sense in Dennis Allen's mind. And so in that instance, Ricky, you would think they would want to just try and enhance what they're doing now. Well, John Gruden is the father of this offense. He's the one that Sean Payton took his offensive system from. So he's the expert in it. And he's an alpha personality, which I think they could probably use on their offensive staff. They've got a lot of younger coaches there. And I can see why they would have interest in him. Now, whether it happens or not, I don't know. I don't know if it will happen. I know John Gruden wants to get back in coaching. He thinks he would like to be a head coach again. He may get a head coaching offer, you know, so that would certainly trump anything that he could do here on the offensive staff. So I think there's a lot to be considered there. I don't think it's a done deal, but I think there's definitely genuine interest on both sides.
My read, of course, you've got some owners out there who are willing to take risks. That's for sure. As it relates to John Gruden becoming a head coach, I give that its due for sure. There are some that are willing to take risks. The owners are tight, though, as you well know. That's one of the things that keeps the NFL together. And that lawsuit and the perceptions around it may keep him from getting that opportunity as a head coach. There's still we still got to get some time to pass as it relates to the suit itself. and then some time to pass just in terms of John Gruden and all of that. With that said, I think it's unlikely he'll become a head coach this year. That's just my read on it. I'd be interested if what you think, that if you're a betting man, what would you say about that? But that that everyone might be sort of amenable to him coming into some kind of role inside where he's not the head guy. Now, what's interesting, you said he's an alpha guy. I've seen that work and I've seen that not work. You got here you have a current head coach who's more of a B personality. And you got and you got Gruden, who is off the charts A personality. How does that work? When you got a guy that used to be a head coach and he's not going to like some of the things that he sees Dennis Allen doing. How does that play out? And does it result in conflict? So it's a lot to play out there. I'm sure they're considering all of these options.
Yeah, there's no question that dynamic has to be considered by Mickey Loomis and Dennis Allen and weighed heavily, because you're not bringing in just any coach. You're bringing in a guy that won a Super Bowl, that's been one of the more successful head coaches in the league at two different stints with two different teams. So you're right. It's not just a normal transaction there. Now, one of the things I think they've done here, it's been pretty smart, is they've brought John Gruden into the fold. Slowly but surely, he's been in the locker room. He spoke to the team at team meetings. He's been at practice, so he's interacted. Players are getting to know him. I think that's smart. So he's not just going to be coming in cold if he came in. They've had interactions. I've talked to players about him. They all like him, at least the ones I've talked to. Now, there's probably some that aren't too keen on this because of what happened. But I would say, I think your point is well taken. I think the Saints would see this, and Gruden would see this as potentially a way for him to come in, get back in the league, get his foot in the door in the league, do some image repair, if you will, and then maybe get another head coaching job down the road. This would be a step toward that.
It seems to me that the NFL at some point will probably want to settle with John Gruden on that lawsuit, because, given what we know about, how complicit some of these guys were in the overall downfall of John Gruden. He owns what happened, incidentally. We all know that. But at the same time, the way it became public was, we're finding out in that lawsuit was something the NFL doesn't want to have to focus too much on because it was not good.
Yeah, and look, he was not employed in the NFL at the time. He was working at ESPN when it happened, so that's part of it. But also, Brian Flores, the defense coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, Steve Wilkes, the defense coordinator for the 49ers, both of them have lawsuits against the NFL right now, and they're coaching in the league. So it's not unprecedented for someone to have a lawsuit and be employed. This is a different nature, obviously, but still, it's not unprecedented.
Jeff Ireland, man, we need him, don't we?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to lose Jeff Ireland. There is a connection there. The rumor and the speculation, of course, is that Jim Harbaugh is going to go to the Chargers to be the head coach there. And people, may not know this, but when Jeff Ireland was with the Dolphins, was the general manager, he tried to bring in Jim Harbaugh. He pursued him as a head coach. So obviously he has an affinity for him. There's some kind of relationship there. And that's one that the Saints do not need to lose. The same thing for Kai Harley, who's interviewing with the Carolina Panthers. Kai Harley's one of the best assets the Saints have. He's the one that manages their salary cap. He's on the cutting edge of that. So those are two key people in the building that the Saints. It's a credit to the Saints that two of the lieutenants under Mickey Loomis are being considered for general manager's job. And they already have one other lieutenant, Terry Fontenot, running the Atlanta Falcons, who, by the way, are rumored to be going after Bill Belichick. So that should be interesting.
Wow. So you mentioned Miami, and we're about out of time. But have you seen the Hard Knocks end season with Miami Dolphins? One of the best ever, I think. Mike McDaniel fascinates me, but he likes the F word.
It's interesting though. He's not your typical coach, right? It's fun to watch how different coaches have different teaching methods, and he's a unique one.
He's unique, and the players seem to respond to him. He's self-effacing, and that I think as a leader, that's a good quality to have, actually.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Look, you have to have the goods, and players just want to be put in position to perform and succeed, and he obviously does that. And so that's why I think that's the foundation of of the respect they
You know,
have.
the ownership of Miami Dolphins, just imagine doing that interview and making the decision to make him your guy.
Right.
They took risk, big time risk, to bring him in the way they did.
And look, I think these playoffs this weekend, Ricky, are going to be fascinating. There's going to be, I think, some upsets. I think if the Saints would have gotten in and got a chance to host the Philadelphia Eagles, I definitely think they could have beaten the Eagles. The Eagles have lost 5 of 6 games right now.
Yeah.
Tampa could beat them, and Tampa's not playing very well either. So that's I know we're wrapping up, but that's the one thing I think we have to say is, yeah, they won 4 of their last 5, but they beat bad teams. When they played good teams, they were 1-5, I think, against playoff teams, 1-4. They weren't very competitive. So you have to weigh that if you're Mickey Loomis and the brain trust of when you evaluate this season.
141 points scored by the Pelicans. It's incredible against the Warriors. Incredible game. Next week you and I have a chance to chat more about that. I'll talk more with Hunter Dawkins, who I'm sure covered that game here after the break. But man, they're building a head of steam right now, aren't they?
Yeah, they're playing lights out right now. And I think that loss to the Lakers, where they got blown out in Vegas, lit a fire under this team. I think it could be a tipping point on the season. They've been really almost unbeatable since then. And right now they're playing probably better than anyone in the NBA. And they're going to ride this train. It's a big road trip they're on right now. A lot of competitive games coming up. But I think these last 2 games, I don't think the Pelicans have ever had 2 road wins back-to-back like this as impressive as beating the Kings by 30 and beating the Warriors by 35.
Hey, you go back to last year, what they took into January last year. The reality was they just had so many injuries decimating the team, And injuries are still part of the conversation today, but so far, so good. We'll talk more about that next week. Hey, man, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Ricky. We'll talk next week, buddy.
You bet. This has been Jeff Duncan for NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. When we come back, we'll have Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette. We'll see you after this.